Step right up, little dreamers. Let me tell you a tale of wonder, magic, and the most extraordinary carnival you've ever imagined. This isn't just any carnival, it's a floating carnival. High above the clouds, where stars twinkle and the moon glows, it drifts silently through the night, spreading joy to every town it visits. Max loved gazing at the night sky. He would imagine all sorts of adventures among the stars. But tonight was different. As Max stared out, he noticed something shimmering on the horizon. It wasn't an airplane or a shooting star. It was a carnival. Yes, a carnival floating through the sky, with glittering rides, colorful banners waving in the wind, and glowing lights casting a golden glow. Max's heart raced with excitement. He had to see it up close. He grabbed his backpack, slipped on his sneakers, and tiptoed out of his house. The carnival was enormous. It hovered just above the rooftops, its vibrant colors lighting up the entire town. A spiral staircase made of sparkling mist began to unfold, stretching from the carnival down to the ground. Without hesitation, Max dashed toward it and began to climb. As Max reached the top of the staircase, he found himself standing in the middle of a world he could never have dreamed of. The air was sweet with the smell of candy, and everywhere he looked, there was something incredible to see. Max's eyes widened as he stepped onto a path lined with Candy-Floss trees. Their fluffy, colorful branches swayed gently in the breeze. He reached out to touch one, and to his delight, it was soft, sticky, and sweet. He broke off a piece and popped it into his mouth. It was the most delicious thing he had ever tasted. Further ahead, a giant Ferris wheel spun slowly, but it wasn't made of metal, it was made of stars. Each seat was a glowing constellation, twinkling with gentle light. Max climbed into one, and as the ride began to turn, he felt as though he was floating among the stars themselves. Below him, the carnival stretched out like a magical wonderland, its lights sparkling against the dark sky. After the Ferris wheel, Max wandered deeper into the carnival and found himself standing in front of a maze. The entrance was marked by two tall poles, each topped with a glowing lantern. Inside, hundreds of lanterns floated in the air, casting a warm, golden glow over the winding paths. The lanterns seemed to hum softly, as if they were alive, guiding Max through the twists and turns of the maze. But it wasn't just lanterns, tiny fireflies danced around him, their lights flickering like little stars. The maze was full of surprises, doors that opened to secret tunnels, mirrors that showed reflections of fantastical creatures, and at the very center, a grand fountain made of light. As Max left the maze, he came upon the most beautiful carousel he had ever seen. Its horses were made of shimmering glass, and they glowed with every color of the rainbow. But this was no ordinary carousel. When Max climbed onto one of the horses, he felt a burst of wind, and suddenly, the carousel lifted into the air. Each horse galloped through the sky, carrying children over clouds and around the carnival. Max felt the cool night air on his face as he soared past glowing balloons and magical fireworks that sparkled like diamonds. Next, Max wandered toward a lake that sparkled like liquid silver. It was surrounded by bushes full of gumdrops and lollipops. He knelt by the edge and saw that the lake wasn't filled with water, it was filled with something sweet and syrupy. Swimming in it were candy fish. The fish were bright and colorful, with gummy tails and chocolate fins. As Max reached out, one of the fish jumped out of the lake and landed in his hand. To his amazement, the fish laughed, a soft, tinkling sound like tiny bells, and then dove back into the sweet lake. Suddenly, music filled the air. Max turned to see a parade floating through the carnival. Enormous balloons shaped like fantastical creatures drifted above, and performers on stilts juggled glowing orbs that never seemed to fall. A band played cheerful tunes, their instruments glowing with magical light. Max couldn't help but laugh and clap as the parade passed by. Each float was more amazing than the last, a dragon made of flowers, a castle made of clouds, and even a ship that sailed on a river of stars. As the night grew late, Max found himself in a quiet corner of the carnival, where the ground sparkled like it was covered in tiny diamonds. He realized he was standing in a garden of fireworks. Each flower in the garden was alive with color, and when Max touched one, it burst into the air with a dazzling display of light and sound. Reds, blues, greens, and golds painted the sky, leaving trails of glitter behind. The garden seemed to come alive, each firework blooming brighter and more spectacular than the last. Max's heart was full of wonder as he walked back toward the entrance. He looked up to see the carnival beginning to rise, floating higher and higher into the sky. The staircase of mist shimmered again, beckoning him to return to the ground. With one last look around, Max stepped onto the staircase. As he descended, he could still hear the music and laughter echoing above him. When Max opened his eyes, he was back in his bed, the soft glow of dawn filling his room. For a moment, he wondered if it had all been a dream. But then, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a tiny glowing lantern, no bigger than his hand. A smile spread across his face. The floating carnival was real, and Max knew that one day, it would return. And so, the floating carnival drifts on, visiting towns and filling hearts with wonder. Who knows? Maybe one night, it will visit your town too. Will you be ready to climb the staircase and explore its magic? Until then, keep dreaming, little adventurer.